Okay, welcome to our Unit 1 Lesson 2 lesson for our radio short course here at Boston Media House. And my name is Chris Jordan. I'm your lecturer for the course, and I hope you are having a great time so far and finding our content and the course itself very interesting in terms of, you know, your own journey of becoming a radio practitioner and your journey into this really great medium. I mean, I can say that safely in terms of I've been you know, in radio, around radio for 23 years, and I'm all intact. I'm fine. I'm okay. You come out the other side and you're still okay. It's all good, and we're going to continue with this whole journey of you actually just loving, absolutely just loving just this medium that's just so great and so unique compared to every other medium that we have come across, I suppose, through the ages, and also the ones that are just coming up and popping up everywhere around us in this particular new era and digital age of media. Okay, so today we're going to do Unit 1, Lesson 2, which is all about the composite listener and building the composite listener. You're saying, what is the composite listener? Well, just give me a second or so and I'll explain to you. So I'm going to move straight into it and stop like just coloring the different aspects that are not important to the lecture at all. Okay, so on the first slide, I say, you know, I pointed out there, what is it that people actually want from radio? And as we have a bit of a conversation, I'm going to be looking towards the slides, looking a little bit at the points. You are more than welcome to just obviously read the detail that is on the slide itself, and then obviously just like put it all together for yourself. And if there are any questions, you know, we'll have some way of building up some communication and so. Okay, so what is radio? You know what radio is in terms of just the physical device itself or the physicality of it, and throughout your whole life, all of us have lived with radio as a soundtrack to our life. It's always there. It's always been there. And in the first lecture, I did explain about how its importance and its growth and its development throughout the ages was really important in us getting to where we are right now. Also with the challenge and the uprising, should I say, the uprising definitely was the uprising for radio when television came around and offered so much more in terms of, you know, that color and that depth of us being able to see something and in a world that was strictly audio, you know, audible, and radio had to find its place. It really had to find its place and its importance to where it was going to actually last as a forever element, you know, medium. And it did. It found its place, and we're right here. But, the thing is that, like anything in life, in 2023, 2024, 2025, it doesn't matter. Things are going to change, and we've got to obviously change with the times. So what do people want from radio? What is it that you want from radio? Ask yourself that. And, you know, we have this ongoing conversation about, there's always these threats. Oh, that's life. That's what happens. So the threats of podcasts and the threats of streaming in any kind of way, the threats of digital platforms, so all our social mediums, plus others. We always just consider just the social mediums, which is not correct. There's the whole frenzy of elements of digital platforms, television itself, print, digital print, whatever it may be, but radio still lasts because it is a real-time medium, right? When we look at the notes, and I want you just to look at some points here that I'm going to refer to, we are trying to understand what it is that the listener will buy into as the medium becomes part of their lifestyle. That is really important to understand. The concept of a lifestyle choice is like you deciding, I want to start running, and I do run, every day. And I like that part of it. It defines a certain aspect of myself, and so I like fitness, I like health, or I like whatever it is, and so I will make space, make time, and again, a place for being able to go and have a good run, whether it's morning, afternoon, doesn't really matter. Again, choice, and you go and customize that to make it fit into your lifestyle, right? So if we take a look at the day and we see exactly what it is that you are deciding to put in there. You want to, let's say, watch some TV, you want to go, like I say, for a bit of a walk or run or go to gym, you need to go to school, for example, you want to go visit some friends, whatever it may be, and you decide to put in radio as part of that lifestyle. That is a choice. No one's forcing your hand, no one's got a noose around your neck, no one's got a gun towards your head. And so the thing is that as a lifestyle choice, this has to actually find a really rich quality, and I would say it's got to be a rich contribution to that person, that listener that chooses to put the media in that lifestyle, I say in that day, because again, the alternative is they just don't have to at all, right? So there isn't, if we say that radio is like a bit of dependency, or it's some kind of mandatory use, or mandatory media, nothing is mandatory in life at all. And we know that someone takes from an existential point of view. You don't have to have anything in life. You don't have to listen to anything. You don't have to read anything. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. I mean, we have the choice of not breathing at the end of the day if we just don't want to. The thing is understanding that radio is not necessary, I'm going to say, but it's great to have. Again, to just like add that little bit of quality in your life. When we choose radio, and we understand that its advantage is that it is a real-time media that communicates by real people, okay, to real people. So we listen to the hosts that are not scripted. Like I'm not being scripted right now, and I'm just talking to you, directly at you. Like we have that personal connection that TV doesn't have, that print doesn't have. Like we know exactly what our strengths are, and exactly as we go through the course, we might also understand what our weaknesses are. Okay, we need to understand what they are doing in their everyday life as well. So I did, this might seem like a bit of a repetition, but I want to say, like, for example, what the music they're listening to, where do they like to go to travel, like what conversations are really important to them at a specific time, what does their family dynamic look like, what are their career goals, and what is their career, if they do have one right now, what is that looking like, what does that look like, etc., etc. What we're trying to build is what we call a composite listener. So it's a bit of a graphical representation and a theoretical understanding just behind that, to understand where exactly does our listener break up into different parts, right? And from there onwards, we can develop content that is relevant to them. We can get advertising that is relevant to them. We can decide on what promos and competitions we would come up with that would be relevant, again, to what it is that maybe they want to win, or maybe they'd want to go somewhere, like as an experience, whatever it may be. What interviews, who we're going to bring in for like an interview, and what parts of that person's presence, so this particular interviewee would be there, to say certain things, Okay, so if we look at, again, some of the notes and just go back to them, there's some really cool aspects that, for example, if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth bullet point there, alongside radio's accessibility, we like to group radio and it into 4 key headings: music variety, specialism, listener interaction, immediacy, and local content. I think that's pretty straightforward. Maybe you might be getting a bit confused with what specialism means. It means like speciality segments. So for example, we might want to do something that is about mental health, or it is about, let's say, health for like women, or we could look at charity causes, or it could be a dance show, or it could be whatever it may be, right? So within, let's say, understanding even a listener further, we can look at these four key headings and be able to also split up, different elements of what makes up what we say and what we do on radio by just looking at those four aspects of it. If we look at what is also important, so the concept of RAMs, so these are measurement figures that we get as a station and understand what it is that the listeners are listening to in terms of stats. So the BRC will run this quarterly every 3 months a year and supply the different stations. They'll make it also public as well. Will also include what it is that they listen to most on radio. Obviously, I say obviously because it is kind of obvious that music, for example, is the main reason why people listen to radio. And a lot of arguments around that have come about, and it was challenged, I would say, rightfully so, when we had music providers like our Spotify's and our Apples or whatever it is, and this was going to be once again a threat. We also don't have the freedom of choice, I say, within a radio station to say what song is going to come next, what song we don't want to hear, etc., and why, let's say, Spotify would be a quote-unquote better choice. But at the end of the day, like if you think of yourself and you think, the more I have to choose my selected let's say playlist off Spotify, the more boring I think I'm going to become at the end of the day or at some point, because I don't really know much more than what I want to hear. And I'll become either repetitive in terms of boring, I still might enjoy it very much so, but I'd probably also want to listen to something that's quite unpredictable. And again, if I'm tuning to a radio station and the format is there, like the format will dictate what music I like, and so the 10-to-1 will play music, in a variety of I'm saying selection and processes and a rotation that'll keep me listening, right? Okay, all right, I'm going to go to the next slide there, so we can start the Composite Listener. So when we build this Composite Listener, okay, once again, it's a graphical representation, and as we go through the slides, you'll understand it better and clearer, because we'll see an example of it with our fake listener, our made-up listener called Amy. But to draw up the Composite Listener, we have to ask ourselves three things, and we have to do three things. It's OAR, that's the methodology. O is to observe. So as a radio practitioner, I always like to give a little bit of anecdotes. It's like, this is one of my favorite anecdotes, because it was where I understood how to really observe and I'm going to say the advantage. I was going to do something a lot bigger there. I was lining up for something a lot bigger. But the advantage of being able to really sit and observe people, listen to their conversations, and for me, once to keep quiet, which was a directive from a friend of mine who was working with me when I was working at Prime Media. On a Friday night, I was doing the 7 to 10 show, and he came in after me. If anyone knows who Sammy, DJ Sammy was, like back then. It was him. So, and he said to me, Chris, how's it going? Would you like the shake or whatever it is, and whatever it is? I said, how was the show? And I said, well, it's a Friday, so it was good. It was good. But it was basic, it was very basic. It's a Friday night. Who wants to listen to anything that's conversational or whatever it may be? And so I played a lot of music as directed by my playlist, and I came in with very short links that would, be able to just come in and out, not a lot of stuff to irritate people. And I understood my listener. I'd been doing radio by that time of about, let's say, 5 years or so. So I knew enough about a listener to make presumptions, that were quite accurate, but not fully accurate. And because he said to me, do you know that for sure? And I said, I suppose so. I'm here, I'm in commercial radio, I got this far. And he said to me, well, why don't you just go, so Prime Media, as you know, it's here in Sandton, across the street. there's a whole bunch of areas, little spaces that are recreational, little clubs or little pubs or restaurants or whatever. So just hop on by there, which I already rolled my eyes because I just I don't like socializing or whatever it is anyway. I was like, okay, fine. And he said, why don't you just go there and keep quiet, Chris, just keep quiet. Listen, like be a bit of a pariah, and listen to what people are actually saying. Because you're going to find out that, and I did find out, I went over to Taboo even, I went to News Cafe, I went to a couple, and I did this on an ongoing basis throughout the week at different places. So it wasn't only just a Friday night, for example, at a certain place, like these obviously clubs and recreational areas are certain types of places, but I would also, let's say, go to a park, for example, and sit there like on a Wednesday at 12 o'clock, just down the road or whatever it is, kind of see what was going on. I would go to the gym and then I would see how people behave, or I would have conversations with people and let them talk to understand what people were actually talking about, and so that I could go back to my show and really see, like for example, maybe on a Friday, maybe they don't want to have a really lengthy conversation about the politics of this country, but maybe they do want to have a conversation about how, TGIF is a thing, but man, I need a little bit more than TGIF these days, because life is hard, and life is hard because of X, Y, and Z. And I could have easily gotten a bunch of listeners that would have spoken to me and had great conversations, and would have also liked to because I'm landing myself right in the middle of their lifestyle and their life itself. Okay, so observation, really important, right? Ask is the next thing, because the thing is, like, you can also look at everything and you can see everything, but you'll only understand it better, right, when you ask a couple of questions, right? So for example, while you are at places, while you are with expert professionals, while you are trying to research stuff, it doesn't really matter. Go and ask a little bit more about this particular person that you're doing some research for, in building this composite listener, to once again get that accuracy on point. Research is the last thing there. You put your skills to the work. Be an obsessor of information. When I teach my students, they seem to forget to put all the things together, all these things and all the other things that I'm going to be talking to you about throughout the course. You got to put it together. You can't only do the black or the white part of anything that you study, I guess, but you got to put it all together. It can't all be opinionated. It can't all be sassy. It can't all be information. It can't all be research, right? You got to go in there and be able to put all your skills together to be able to make the best use of it, right? So when we do the research, for example, we might decide to do it quite formally in the forms of surveys or questionnaires, open-ended questions and closed-ended questions, what we call qualitative and quantitative research, right? To get it all together, there are also things like our social media trends, our news sources, our expert professionals, asking more questions and following this course of action, right? To be able to really get something that really reflects that listener, like we're going to show you in just a moment. Well, I'm going to show you. I'm not the queen. I'm going to talk about we and so on, right? Okay. All right. So, for example, here's some questions that you can ask. How do they live? What's important to them? Their regrets. Where do they go? What do they do? What do they find likable? What do they worry about? Where are they hanging out? What are their dreams? Their priorities? Where they're spending their free time? What do they talk about with their friends? How are they biased? What is exciting to them? Where they're vacating to? So for vacations, right? And where they hang out, who they admire, what they do, why they do what they do, and what they want to be. These are great amount of questions to to start understanding once again, to really move forward in understanding this composite listener. So what are the steps? If we look here, we want to build that composite. We want to make up a certain person, right, that reflects our listener most accurately. You're going to see that we're going to use Amy, for example. You've got to use your own version of Amy that matches the listener for your particular station, right? Because if we look at Kaya versus Metro versus Kakasi FM versus 5 FM versus Jacaranda FM, like their composites are going to look completely different. And there's going to be different people that are going to represent that particular composite. So make sure that you are inventing this person with all their different attributes and aspects that make their lifestyle exactly what that is, according to the format of your station and what is expected according to your BCCSA license from you, and to what end you need to supply that. Okay, all right. So we want to be able to understand who they are, and if we go down to adjust, we're going to be able to just kind of refine that a little bit there. You can go have a read through that. I've pretty much covered that there. I want to get straight into OAR of Amy. So you're going to see a little bit of picture there. She's quite a pretty little lady there. Doing a little bit of an Instagram post, I'm guessing. Okay, so we want to be starting our questions. You see how this is going to obviously culminate to something a little bit larger and a little bit more detailed. So where does Amy? Where does she live? Where does she go? What does she do? Where does she do it? Okay, and where does she shop? What does Amy? Right? So what does she like? What does she worry about? What does she want? What are Amy's dreams? What are her hobbies? And what are her fears? Okay? And who are Amy's friends, family, heroes? What does Amy love, hate, find disgusting? Again, so now we're going to start looking at these different aspects that bring these questions into a next step or phase. So like how does she live? What are her priorities? Where does she like going? What's likable considered in terms of the context of what she finds likable and what she finds unlikable? You're going to see in a moment, you're going to see that Amy is she's a divorced single mom, very young, and so, for example, in terms of likability, she doesn't like men, for example, that are just untrustworthy, untruthful, or at this point she's very wary of that type of thing. And you're going to say, well, what importance is that? We can take just that aspect. I just want to start getting you in the right frame of mind here. So we're going to take that aspect over there, and we can start dealing with relationship issues. We can broaden that out to varied and ongoing conversations in terms of content that different presenters will use the composite listener and say, okay, I'm going to look at some news, I'm looking at some sources, I'm going to find that maybe there's a research study that says if you go for, let's say, marriage counseling, this has now been proven to ruin your marriage, guaranteed. I don't know. And I would, let's say, go on air and I would speak to a marriage counselor and say, defend yourself, do something about that, right? But Amy will definitely be interested in understanding that, turn-ons and turn-offs, self-image. What are your dreams? What's important? Hobbies, talk about her friends. Regrets, what she admires, and what is exciting, etc. Here you go, and this is the image that we want to be able to look at so that you can understand how we are breaking it out fully into what Amy is all about. So I'm going to go through a couple of the segments, maybe all of them as well. And I want you, while we're going through this, I want you to start thinking about in what ways will we be able to construct some kind of action. So again, it's not only about the content that goes out on air, but maybe, again, I know that interviewing and whatever it is part of content, but the content in terms of call-outs that we're doing, the content in terms of standalone stuff that we want to do, the content in terms of competitions, once again, in terms of promotions, in terms of, once again, even the music that we choose, and the speciality shows that we want to construct, etc., etc. Let's get into some of them here. Okay, so let's say, for example, school. So with school, let's look at some of the aspects there. The school is broken up into, let's say, balancing some time. I'm going to come back to it, like housing, fear of failing, career, unemployed, money, pressure, unfulfilled, and conflict. Okay, so let's look at some of these and understand Amy a little bit closer, a little bit more, right? So for example, let's say balancing time. It's very obvious. I think it's quite understanding. If you are working and let's say you're studying at the same time, you can get kind of devoted or too overly devoted to one or the other, and it becomes a bit of a nightmare to try and balance that just in general, right? So like we definitely understand there's a lot of pressure to that. Maybe some, if we look at, let's say, what we can translate that onto in terms of radio, we can definitely get advertisers for different schools or different tutors or different whatever it is, and we can, kind of, I would say, satisfy that point of the schooling aspect of Amy's life, right, and lifestyle, right? For example, the fear of failing, nice, it's psychosomatic, which is really great. Fear of failing is something that we can talk about again forever in varied aspects, right? So maybe some triggers, maybe it's situational, maybe it's a constant paranoia that people have as well. Even the understanding of what failure is a great talk topic, as well, because a lot of people, even though we know the black and white of what failure and success is, we will always break ourselves down. For example, I literally did that as one of my Twitter polls before I went on air a couple of weeks back, and I said, are you more likely to break yourself down or pull yourself up? And everybody that submitted their response to that particular poll said they break themselves down. So I used the poll, for example, to then go and create content, not on the poll, but knowing that I would have to then, I came up with a really great piece. It's really great, it's really nice, okay, where two words are going to change your life. Okay, that's how I labeled it. And what was it about? Well, I watched this conversation. I don't know if it was a TED talk. I love TED in general, but it was a talk of this lady who was saying, if you could eradicate two words out of your vocab forever, you can never use them again, ever. Ever. What two words? The Oxford Dictionary is massive. In fact, this woman actually read the Oxford Dictionary every night when she went to bed. She found it very enjoyable. It was her thing, man. It was a thing. Anyway, so she said there, pick any two of this massive here dictionary. Get rid of them. You can't use them. So the audience was a bit perplexed, and they sat there and were like, which ones would I choose? Which ones will I choose, right? And this has relevance to what I'm saying about here of failure. And she said, okay, let me help you out. So what about, let's say colors. I mean, how often do we use colors? So let's talk about like the word maybe magenta. Magenta, you can never use it again, ever. And some people were like, well, I mean, maybe I might use magenta, so I'd like to keep that. I'm like, fine, okay, cool. What about, I don't know, maybe countries, maybe countries in this world. There are so many, I mean, even cities. Would you like to maybe eradicate one of those or two of those, right? And the audience said, yeah, well, I don't think I could live an entire life without being able to never use a city's name or a country's name, so I think I'm going to have to look for something different. She said, stop this process because it's going to carry on and on and on, and you're not going to get what I'm trying to say to you. Not one single person there actually brought up one negative word that they used to break themselves down, right? And that was, she says, isn't that shocking to you? Isn't that shocking that we'll hold on to like these words and this diction that we use to put ourselves down? She said, if you can just eradicate two of them, right, two of them, just to make yourself feel a little bit better, you know, and you'll see the little ripple effects that it's going to have on you. Why wouldn't you choose to do that? And personally, I mean, I used my two that were apparently my favorite was loser, which was so hard to actually say out loud, but we are cruel to ourselves. Loser and failure was another one, right? And just kind of like the happy ending there. I mean, I haven't used it since, I think it's been like 2 years now, and the ripple effect has been great. And I thought this would be really great, and it was great on air. So I went and I used one aspect of what I understand of Amy as a listener, fear of failing, and being like, I'm going to bring this in as a conversation that is going to be relevant in a certain very specific aspect, okay? I mean, it's been customized, been narrowed down. I put some dimension in there, and it landed well with the listeners. And that's what you're going to do with all these type of things. Okay. So, for example, let's say sex. Okay. She has an ex, as I said, she's broken up. So the concept of the ex. Okay. Balance once again. Sex and relationships there. So jealousy, living together, orientation, marriage, single, insecurity, dating, boundaries, that type of stuff, right? If we look over at friends, relationships and friends, two very different things as well. So it's not wise to like package them together, try and spread them out. Old friends, new friends, you know, the social media friend that you have had for, I don't know, maybe like 10 years, but you've never ever met them. That is still a friend. You've never had a negative encounter with them, and so you're friendly with them, replacing in-person interaction. With co-workers as well, distance between you and another person. We do know that we just went through the COVID pandemic, and it affected our ability to socialize. A lot more depression, a lot more anxiety, a lot more like social anxiety has been something that's been prominent around the majority of people on this planet, and no longer a clinical, I would say, like a clinical situation for somebody, right? So, okay, don't want to spend too much time. I think you do understand with this. So with family, disappointment, like disappointment, is she going to disappoint her parents? She's busy raising her own child. She's got an older sister, sometimes doesn't get along with her. She's worried about her parents' health as well. At the end of the day, they're all getting a bit older. You know, what are the expectations that a family puts on you as well? Can also be pressures and definitely massive factors in. Let's go to self-image. So the self, exercise, she's got a little bit of guilt when she eats like a chocolate or whatever it is. Possessions, time for herself. Impressing others is definitely something that we all would like to not admit to, but okay, like here we are, you know, that we are human beings. We will land in that, and it will mean something of importance, of something of value to us at the end of the day. Food style, clothes, stress, sleep, being fat, etc. You know, so looking at self-image. And the last one is about the online social media presence. So, for example, a profile there compared to an actual profile as a human being, right? Because yes, we are not human beings on social media as much as as personalized as it is and as real, quote unquote, as it is. We have a big gap between who we actually are and who we present ourselves on social media. Okay, all right, profile, status, ego, and the other life that we want to actually present. And there's merit in all of that, I'm saying. So no dissing social media just yet, you know. Okay, so why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Here's some very important points, okay? So for the Composite Listener profile, we're going to start to understand the mindset. As I said, if we understand the mindset of that listener, we will be able to talk to them about something that is specifically important to them that will make them click like this, all right, and make us connect immediately. So it's very important that while building the Composite Listener, that you're looking at both your core and your target market, right? When you look at, people always talk about the target market first. It's actually, it's a bit inaccurate. Your core market are the people that you literally have to actually like let's say get as a radio. So these are listeners that you have to get. So let's say it's a core market of a black female between the ages of 21 and maybe let's say 28 with an SEM of around about I don't know, between 6 and 8. And then we would understand further aspects of this particular core listener. But a target audience would include, let's say, black males, you know, between the ages of 21 to let's say 28, but also would include black male, female, maybe female, more likely between the ages of 18 to 21 as well, with maybe a little bit lower SEMs, all right, as we're moving a bit into the transition from the BRC side, right, and that's how we look at core and target markets, right? So we look at the core market right now. We want to make sure that the core market is satisfied, and that we want to get more core markets, core market people coming towards our radio station, right? To see value in the Composite Listener, you will build on-air promotions, you'll create features and specialized shows or segments that are recurrent to the value in their lifestyle. So in other words, like we're going to put a feature together, right? The feature is going to be important to them, you understand? Or it's going to mirror something that's going to be happening in their lives. So recurrent, right? Okay? So know which angles to take when choosing content, for example, in a call out, an interview, when you want to go and produce, let's say, some content for your digital platforms. You want to, let's say, excuse me there, so you want to be able to say that you're creating the correct, you're putting in all that effort, man, you know digital, it is a lot of effort to go create a reel that is like professional, that has put, you know, has got something to say that's important, that's quality, etc. You want to land correctly, right? So know how to build a social media community with your listeners and build podcast series, for example, that can add further value. So not taking the stuff on radio and just like cutting and pasting it, saying it's a podcast. No, go create something brand new and fresh. That's what a podcast is, to live on its own. Okay, so here's a bit of a snap exercise that you can try, and we'll end the lecture on that. Okay, so can you come up with ideas for each one of the examples listed in the previous slide? Okay, so once again, the previous slide, you can go have a look there. Once again, here. Okay, for example, an on-air competition. So I said here, an exotic beauty and spa day that is up for grabs in association with Classical for both men and women who will love this, right? Or an interview. It's an interactive interview with a motivational speaker where listeners can call in for advice, or they can, or how they can help themselves break from losses or failures in their life. Okay, so I've taken, those are just some examples from even the previous Composite Listener that was set up there, but, and I put it all together, and that is that. I'm sorry, there are a couple more slides. Okay, let me just take a break, take a moment. I've got a couple more, just I know I did promise you a bit of an ending there. It's coming very soon. Just a little, so here's a graphical representation of understanding like let's say, look at who are we serving? For example, we could be serving the elderly, the blind, armed forces, children, those that are living in remote areas, right? With special interests that are ethnic communities, culture, and art. So these are different, let's say, different listenerships. You understand? So if you look at radio, certain radio stations are built around a certain type of person. For example, they will be, let's say, sports oriented, and so we might have a sports station, right? For example, different types of music genres also defined, as we said before. Religious programming should make that quite clear to you as well. So, for example, our impact radios as well. And on the other side, if we want to have a look at it, like in terms of social connection. What gives a social connection? The basics, man. Traffic and weather, news, political and social viewpoints, charities, childcare, job and money, and your initiatives, for example, any DIY grants or whatever it may be. These are just examples, right? So what type of interaction would we like to have with them? Again, competitions, phone-ins, ordinary people. We want to put ordinary people, not extraordinary people all the time on radio. Opinion and debate, community involvement, like an agony aunt maybe, and a mood changer. Let's have a look at the last two then. So with local connections, we can obviously locally connect to our local newspapers. We can look at advertisers that are in our area, school closures, covering rural areas if we are in that space and place, politics presenters, local communities, and for example in entertainment, audiobooks and genres, presenters, music and sport. Okay, so just to kind of just blow that up just a little bit more. So I'm not going to go through this over here in terms of very much detail. I want you to just have a look and understand that in terms of our universal radio attributes, right? We can look at like what is primary to radio. What is primary? Music and presenters. Agree? That's true. When we get to our secondary flow there, or secondary layer, what is making that up? It's our sports, competitions, guest celebs, new talent, our opinion and debate, our speech, our local content and our news. And in our third tier over there, for example, a range of broadcasters serving communities and individuals. There was a bit of learning that was included in there, and special interests as well. Okay, so just to understand what is the most important, it is the most important, our music and our presenters, especially again music-based radio, our music formatted radio, and then we move on to the rest. So we want to be able to, once again, how does this tie into the Composite Listener? All of this ties into the Composite Listener. Remember, everything that we do on air and everything that we want to put out on air is tied in to their interest or this particular person that you have come up with, right? Okay. This is the end. Okay, so where is the listener now? Well, I mean, where are they? They are everywhere. I'm not going to read through all of these here, but I'm going to summarize exactly what the thought process around it is. The listener is everywhere, and they're so busy, and they're so distracted, and rightfully so. There are so many stimulants in our everyday lives that we are everywhere. We kind of think that we know everything or a little bit about everything. We have opinions about everything and anything at any one time. We're kind of a bit of a mess, from day to day. Yet we are still trying to keep it together, and we are still moving forwards or backwards or standing stagnant, as any human being in history has done. So we need to also understand that, yes, we can't cop out to the flavor of the fact that there's this planet now that is completely consumed and overloaded and overflooded with a whole bunch of things that we must now take a step back and say, well, we kind of stand very little chance to be able to understand a human being from their basic needs and their basic wants and their basic fears and their basic joys. This is how we get to connect to a listener in every single way. You can have a read through that. I'm going to say bye for now.